We've already discussed how to add and subtract fractions with uncommon denominators. Today, I want to review one strategy that can make this fraction work easier and faster. We can use money to help us add and subtract fractions. Do you have your money model reference sheet and the money tools? If not, grab those now to look at and use while we practice. Let's go. To review, we know that $1 is made up of 100 pennies and can be represented as 100 out of 100 and 1.00 as a decimal. Using a half-dollar coin, we can break $1 into two parts, and each part can be represented as 1/2 or 50 out of 100 pennies and 0.50 as a decimal. And we say this decimal amount as 5/10 because the single 5 is in the tenths place value, or we can say it as 50 hundredths because the number 50 rests in the hundredths place value. A quarter of a dollar is 1/4, or 25 out of 100 pennies, or 0.25 as a decimal. We say this decimal is 25 hundredths because the number 25 rests in the hundredths place value. It takes 10 dimes to make $1, so it can be written as 1/10 or 10 out of 100 pennies or 0.10. We say this decimal as either 1/10 because the 1 sits in the tenths place value, or we can say it as 10 hundredths because the number 10 rests in the hundredths place value. A nickel is half as much as a dime, so it takes 20 nickels to make $1 and is written as 1/20 or 5 out of 100 pennies and 0.05 as a decimal. We say this decimal is 5 hundredths because the single 5 sits in the hundredths place value. Our final coin is a penny, and it takes 100 pennies to make $1 and is written as 1 out of 100 pennies or 0.01 as a decimal. At this point, can you state how to say this decimal? It is 1 hundredths because the single 1 sits in the hundredths place value. Did you notice that how we say all of the decimal numbers is the same way we say all of the fractions? This is correct because the fractions and decimals are the same value. 5 out of 100 or 5 hundredths is the same amount as 0.05. Fractions and decimals are simply two different ways of saying a value less than a whole. Let's try an easy addition problem to practice using the money model. I'm going to show you how to solve each problem using both fractions and decimals. You do not have to solve all of your problems both ways. You can pick the one you like better, either working as fractions or as decimals. Okay, 1/2 plus 1/4. I know that 1/2 of a dollar is equal to 50 hundredths, and 1/4 of a dollar is equal to 25 hundredths. I now already have my common denominators and can add the numerators. 50 plus 25 equals 75 hundredths, and this is simplified down to 3/4. I can also solve this problem using decimals. 1/2 is 0.50 and 1/4 is 0.25 in the money model. Adding my decimals, I get 0.75. Since the problem is written as fractions, I should write my final answer as a fraction too. So I need to convert this decimal back to a fraction. I write it the way I say it, 75 hundredths, because it sits in the hundredths place value. And I need to then simplify it down to 3/4. Now, let's try a little more complex subtraction problem. See how this money model really helps us. 3/4 minus 3/10. I know that 1/4 of a dollar is 25 hundredths. So 3/4 is 75 hundredths because I have 3/4, not just one. I also know that 1/10 of a dollar is 10 hundredths. So 3/10 is 3 times as much, or 30 hundredths, because I'm working with 3 dimes, not just one. I now have my common denominators and can subtract my numerators. 75 minus 30 equals 45 hundredths. Simplified down, this is 9/20ths. Solving this using decimals, I know that 3/4 is 0.75 and 3/10 is 0.30. 0.75 minus 0.30 equals 0.45. To convert this back to a fraction, I write it the way I say it, 45 hundredths, or simplified, 9/20ths. As you can see, it doesn't matter if I use fractions or decimals to solve the problem. Either way, I get the same answer because fractions and decimals have common values. We can just write those values two different ways. We can also understand fractions of a dollar even though we do not have a specific coin to represent the amount, such as 1/5. 1/5 equals 20 cents, or 0.20 written as a decimal. And written as a fraction of a dollar, that's 20 out of 100. We have seen that we can work with the unit fractions now: 1/2, 1/4, 1/5, 1/10, 1/20th, and 1/100th using the money model. Can you think of other unit fractions that can be made from a dollar? What about 1/25th and 1/50th? If you notice, the denominators are all factors of 100. Can I also take a moment to remind you about an important fact about fractions? Look at the denominator and the fraction's value. 1/2 equals 50 cents. This fraction has the smallest denominator, but the value of that fraction is the largest amount. This is because if I have a dollar and give half of it to my sister and the other half to my brother, they each get 50 cents. That's only two people getting part of the whole dollar. But if I give my dollar to 50 friends, as in the fraction 1/50th, that means I have to divide my dollar into 50 parts. So everyone can only have 2 cents each. So remember, a fraction's denominator tells you how many parts the whole is broken into. The smaller the denominator, the bigger the parts or the value of those parts. The larger the denominator, the smaller the parts or the value of those parts. Let's practice a couple more addition and subtraction problems using the money model. If you're ready to try these on your own, press pause and then finish the video when you're ready to check your work. In the first one, we have 2/5 plus 6/20ths. Knowing that 1/5 is 20 hundredths, then 2/5 is twice as much, so 40 hundredths. Knowing that 1/20th is 5 100ths, then 6/20ths is 6 times as much, or 30 hundredths. I can now add my numerators. 40 plus 30 equals 70 hundredths. This is simplified down to 7/10ths. Using decimals, 1/5 is 20 cents, so 2/5 is 40 cents, 0.40. And knowing 1/20th is 5 cents, so 6/20ths is 30 cents, 0.30. Add my decimals up. 0.40 plus 0.30 equals 0.70. I convert this decimal back to a fraction the way I say it, 70 hundredths, or simplified down to 7 tenths. In the second expression, we have 8 tenths minus 3 fourths. Knowing that 1 tenth is 10 100ths, then 8 tenths is 80 hundredths. Knowing that 1/4 is 25 hundredths, so 3 fourths is 75 hundredths. I can now subtract my numerators. I have common denominators. 80 minus 75 equals 5 100ths. Simplified down to 1/20th. Using decimals, 1 tenth is 10 cents, so 8 tenths is 80 cents, or 0.80. And knowing 1/4 is 0.25, or 25 cents, then 3 fourths is 0.75, or 75 cents. Subtract my decimals. 0.80 minus 0.75 equals 0.05. Convert this decimal back to a fraction the way I say it, 5 100ths, or simplified to 1/20th. In summary, knowing the fractions and decimal values that make up a dollar can be useful in solving fraction problems. We just solved addition and subtraction fraction problems the same way we already practiced in Lesson 2. But using our knowledge of money, we can start finding those common denominators or converting to decimals to solve the problems faster and easier. When you have a fraction problem to solve, think, are both denominators a 2, 4, 5, 10, 20, 25, 50, or 100? If yes, then convert the fraction to money and solve it. Remember, I showed you how to use the money model to solve fraction problems using both fractions and decimals. When you are solving problems using the money model, pick just one way that you want to solve them, either as fractions or decimals. You do not have to solve the problem both ways.